This week, the Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reminded us how we arrived at this Trump immunity insanity when she introduced articles of impeachment against Justices Alito and Thomas, who both voted for it.
In January 2021, after the former president of the United States incited an insurrection on the Capitol in this chamber to interfere with the results of the U.S. election, Justice Samuel Alito and his wife flew an upside-down American flag, a symbol of solidarity with the attack, outside their home. Despite the overwhelming appearance of a conflict of interest, Justice Alito refused to recuse himself from cases surrounding the 2020 election and questions of the former president's legal immunity in the attack. Justice Thomas, who is married to Virginia Thomas, a financially and personally involved operative in the Stop the Steal movement and Capitol attack, also joined opinions in these cases, even as clear evidence mounted that not only was his wife fully committed to overthrowing the results of a fair election, but she was actively lobbying members of the Trump administration attempting to do just that. The questions before the court had unquestionable implications for Thomas's wife and consequently Thomas himself, making his refusal to recuse one of the most shocking examples of conflict of interest in the court's history.
Joining us now is the Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He served as an impeachment manager in the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump. He's suing Donald Trump over the January 6th attack. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us again tonight.
You too, Ali. My pleasure.
There are a couple of bills that are going through that are answering a question that a lot of people have, that if this court is perverse in its rulings and doesn't have any ability to police itself, then maybe Congress needs to get involved, and that's legally sound. But you want to remind people that not only is this ruling about Donald Trump's immunity as it relates to January 6th the problem, it's the danger of what a Donald Trump would do in a second term now that he's got that immunity in his pocket.
That's right, Ali. Just imagine what a second term with Donald Trump would look like. He's already told us through Trump's Project 2025. And we saw this actually in his first term when he appointed 3 judges that he has in his palm, and they took away a right that women have had for the last 50 years. Like that, it vanished. And so what else will be gone? It's rights that we hold dear. The right to use IVF for a pregnancy, gone. The right to an abortion, gone. The right to marry who you want to marry, gone. The right to divorce, gone. And even, Ali, the right to read what you want to read, it's all gone. And beyond that, he will move us to a place where we have to have hushed conversations. We have to move our text messages to Signal and hope that the encryption will hold up. He'll send his stormtroopers out to anyone who speaks dissent, and if you do, you'll disappear. And so what we must do is make sure that while Joe Biden created a job for almost everyone in America who wants one, there's one person we cannot hire, and that's the bankrupt, racist felon who violently sent his friends to storm the office where he was last fired. That's the way out, is to not let him put any more justices on the court.
And the LA Times in your home state made that case in an editorial today. The New York Times made it a few days ago. This isn't a typical endorsement of a candidate for president. This is a warning. It's a shot across the bow. Project 2025 is a really big shot across the bow. This is what you're going to get, which is what a lot of people are saying. We're having a different argument right now about Joe Biden, but in fact, option B is Donald Trump, and he's told you, and Project 2025 has told you what you will get. You just articulated a lot of it, but you're not making this up. If I say to people, you know, Swalwell was just saying that stuff on TV, you've got 900 pages to back you up, written by the Heritage Foundation.
And these are his friends, and his friend, the architect of this, just admitted today in a leaked conversation that Donald Trump knows what he's doing by trying to run away from this, but he really believes in it. But we have an opportunity not to worry about what happened for 90 minutes in a debate a couple weeks ago, but to prevent what could happen over the next 40 years. And I just want to tell you, Ali, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We were at a parade a couple months ago, and we were passing out candy and rubber duckies. And a man looked at my son as he tried to give the man's little girl a ducky, and he said, "We're for Trump." And my little boy looked at him and he said, "Who's Trump?" And I think my responsibility as a father is to make sure that those three kids and every little kid like them in America says that. Who's Trump? I don't want them to ever have a memory of this guy. So we have an opportunity to inoculate the next generation from Donald Trump and never talk about this guy in our lives again.
Congressman, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us. Congressman Eric Swalwell of California.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.